For those who are new to the channel, I share videos and tutorials here on YouTube, and you can find free high-resolution photo references on my Patreon site. If you like what I do and you want to support me, you can show your love over at Patreon.
Hey guys, I'm Yuli Swang, and today we are going to sketch this teapot together. So if you haven't seen the first two of my videos, and if you're new to sketching, I suggest you check that out. The first video is I shared the tools I used for sketching, and the second video is how I transferred the outline on my sketch paper to get an accurate proportionate subject. I will do a pop-up link so you can check that out. The playlist is called Intro to Sketching. Pardon, my voice feels a little different. I'm recovering from a sore throat, but anyways. This is my first time sketching still life, as I think this particular teapot has basic shapes and not much texturing, so I decided to share a real-time video along with my in-the-moment thought process to help make it easier for you to follow. If you don't have a charcoal pencil, that's fine. You can use your darkest B pencil like 8B or 9B. If you have a polychromos black, that is the closest darkness to charcoal, I think. If you like this video, I really appreciate a like and subscribe. It goes a long way for my YouTube channel, and hopefully it can bring more awareness to people who are trying to learn more about this art form. I also share these tutorials for free and share free reference photos, and if you'd like to support me, you can pledge on Patreon. You can also follow me on Insta to get the latest updates. I'm most active there. So now, without further ado, let's move on.
Alright, so I have all the tools I have with me that I explained in the first video, Intro to Sketching, where I shared the tools. I'm going to start with my charcoal pencil, and I like to go where is the darkest point of the photo. In that sense, you can see the reference photo, you can see is at the bottom of the teapot. I'm just gonna color here, maybe or a little bit here as well, and just a little bit here. I'm not going over the edge here, so if you can see the reference photo, there's a little bit of light bounce at the side of the teapot because the surface of the teapot reflects the light that is, sorry, it's you can see the light being reflected on other surfaces that is reaching the side of the teapot, in the sense that you can also see that it is spherical because of the way the light is bouncing on it, the surfaces. So I got my blending stump, and I'm just gonna smudge the charcoal all around. You can see right now it has that beautiful black. Oh, hang on, sorry, just adjusted the focus of the camera. Alright, so I don't rely on the charcoal to be my outline because of how blur and blunt it is. It's not very refined, so I don't really rely on that. I usually use my mechanical pencil to give that really smooth and very sharp and controlled outline. So I'm just going to go over the places I need to go, because the pot is black, and you notice that there is a lot of reflection going on, because shadows does not just come in the form of black, it actually comes in the form of a lot of things, in the sense that, you know, especially when it comes to light, the light will reflect off object around its area and it will give off that. And as we are going through, since we're doing sketching, it's really important to take note of this, because if you want to do realistic sketches, these are kind of the little itty-bitty information that you have to translate to your viewers. I'm just going to mark where I'm going to stop sketching the charcoal. So I'm going to stop around here. It's kind of important to do the charcoal first because it's very soft lead and it's very rough, or else graphite is very hard and it's very glossy, so it's difficult to put charcoal on graphite as opposed to the other way around. So you can see there's a lot of very rough pattern because charcoal and graphite don't really give that super smooth blending, hence why we need a blending stump. Now, in looking at the reference photo, around the edge here is not very dark. You have like a very slight outline of light right around here. But because the area is not very bright to begin with, I can just use my blending stump because there's still a lot of traces of carbon on it. So I can just use the remnants of it and just color the area. So here is not very bright, but then moving on top it gets a little brighter. Over here, same thing. It's like an area where it is slightly lighter. So if it's very light, I'll just gingerly brush it. But if I really want that carbon to go and smoothen out everywhere, I can go quite strong with a bit more pressure so it can blend properly. Okay, there's a lot of carbon dust around, so I'm just gonna blow that out. Just in case, I just dab the area because I don't want any accidental smudges. Okay. So you can see around here, it's still it's not a very smooth outline. It's very rough. So I'm gonna take a Polychromos black, just to go around, but it still looks very blunt, so I think I'm going to skip it I'm just gonna go straight away use the mechanical pencil. So the mechanical pencil gives a very smooth outline. And you can still see a little bit of white around there. So I'm just gonna go over it with the blending stump and spread that carbon. Okay, just like that. It's alright if you go out a line over here because there will be shadow that the teapot will cast. But at this point, the bottom of the teapot is the darkest in the reference photo. Over here and over here, I would most probably want to make it darker, but I can't really gauge how bright it will be right now because I need to see the whole shading as a whole before I make a decision. So I'm gonna get my carbon pencil again, and I'm gonna go over to the handle here, and I'm just going to put like this, not too thick of a line, because again we can still use that blending stump and spread that charcoal, so we don't need to color it so completely dark. Just make like one line over here, then after that it starts to get dark around here as well. If you don't have a charcoal pencil, you don't have to worry. You can just use the darkest pencil you got. And then we also have around here is the teapot mouth. So right now I like to pick the darkest spots. Personally, I like it because I like to straight away, boom, see where all the contrast is going, and it just gives that instant gratification. Because one thing I love about, for me, what makes a really good sketch is the control of contrast. And then another area, wait, just go one line here, because you can see that there's a line of highlight right there followed by really dark shadows. So for the charcoal, I'm just going to do like one line here, and then there'll be a separation. And the last one is around the teapot snout. Okay, I'm just going to do the line, even though the outline is right here. I'm not exactly going near it because I am a little skeptical with carbon. Carbon is very loose, so I have to be a bit careful with it. If you have graphite, it's a little bit more controlled because you can see all the carbon dust is going everywhere. Yeah, sorry, if you have graphite, it should be more controlled. So in that sense, you don't have to worry too much. Okay, this smudge is not going away. Okay, sorry about that. Sorry about all the shakes. Alright, so I think we're more or less done with the charcoal, but right now we just need to blend before we carry on. Wait, hang on. still need a little bit more over here. And also to be very, very careful. Hang on, let me get a piece of paper. I have a piece of paper here with me. So to avoid smudging, you can see that I'm already quite careless. I have some smudge on my hand, and if I'm not careful, I can smudge everywhere. So you can see I can start smudging already just by placing my hand on it. This goes for both carbon and graphite. Graphite is probably like you don't have the powder going everywhere as charcoal, but it still smudges quite a bit, so you have to be quite wary of this. Okay, just gonna move on to the handle now. I'm just slowly just smoothing out the carbon first before I go anywhere else. Alright, so paying attention, there is a very, very strong highlight around the edge here. So I'm not gonna touch that. Usually for highlights, I try not to touch anything at all. I want the pure white of the paper to just show through, because it's kind of like inks in a way. Like you have your black ink, and trying to top that off with white ink is possible, but it's not as pure anymore. The white is not as bright, so it doesn't make that good of a highlight anymore. Okay. There is also a bit of highlight around here, so we're just going to not blend at that area. Okay, so I'm going to turn the paper so it's easier for me to start going around, because you have to understand your body. Like the wrist feels very natural in this kind of curve, so I will move the paper in an angle that is comfortable for me. Then I'll just continue on with my shading. Okay, that's all for now for the handle, but I will get back to that. Now I'm just gonna go with the teapot mouth here. Over here, I'm going to use the sharper side. You can see how my blending tool, I've been using it so much that it just kind of sharpens itself. So I'll just use the sharp edge and go over here. So in this sense, it's not, well, if you think about it, you can actually just do charcoal without graphite in that sense, but I still like graphite. I like the control I have with graphite. Okay. Can also outline it here using the blending stump. Give that a very lighter tone over here. Okay. Then we're gonna move around here. The highlight line right here is actually not that it's actually not that fat, not that wide, but I like a much finer line using graphite or the mechanical pencil, so I can have a bit more control. Now we are slowly moving to the snout. I'm gonna start with the teapot snout. There is, if you look closely, there is a little white line of highlight just about here. Feels kind of odd it being there actually. Okay, so this line here we don't touch. We'll just go around it as per the reference photo. So we'll go around here. Because there's so much reflection going on, it's important to note these lines of highlight. Even the highlight around here is not just a rectangle, there's like a bit of lines to it, like a shape of its own. There is one thin line of highlight here, which I'll just leave that alone. Then as we slowly come up, We're gonna color it. Maybe lightly for dramatic effect. Maybe not fully shadow. Because there's many light sources going on in this photo. If it's a single light source, then there wouldn't be that many highlights going on, or you know, not as complicating. Slowly come here. Slowly move here on a lighter note. Take the sharper point here to get a sharper blend. Also like a highlight line around the lip area. Go around here. It's many lines of highlights here. Okay, that is all for now. For the carbon, that is. Oh right, I actually did forget one more spot for the carbon, which is here. This one's a little tricky because there is quite a lot of shapes going on here. If you want to simplify it, then you know you can just go just a very basic shape of highlight, whichever works best for you. It's always good to just practice and learn. Every piece doesn't have to be a masterpiece. We are just studying the forms of shadows and highlights and how this help illuminate the subject and making it into a beautiful piece. It's just a study. So there you go. And that's it. Just blend, which is mostly what sketching to me is about. It's just kind of understanding the things around and just putting that on paper. The rest are not as dark, so I am not too concerned about that. Excuse me. All right, I think we're kind of done with our charcoal. So we can move on to our pencils. Normally for pencils, even though I've shown you quite a few variants, I normally use HB and I think maybe 8B the most. 6B and 2B is a little bit on the icing on top if I just want a little bit more gradient. But I just like the extreme light and the more extreme black. I use polychromos to kind of replicate the carbon a little with a bit more control, because the carbon just kind of goes everywhere. So if I want something really dark, almost as dark as the charcoal, but I want more control, I'll use the polychromos. Okay. Now the wonderful thing about graphite is that you can work from light to dark. So if you're feeling a little uncertain, then you can just go over it with like say a HB because it's lighter. Okay, you know what? I think I'll go here first. We'll fix that highlight around here. Okay, fix this highlight here. Get my blending stump. Just kind of gingerly blend that in. If you're feeling unsure, you can use your eraser. If you want it to be a little bit brighter, you can just, you know, knead it to the diameter that you wish. You just tap it, or you just lightly pick up the area that you want a little bit brighter. So that's the wonderful thing about kneadable eraser. All right, we're going to the next one, which is around here, which is really, really dark. So over here, I'm going to use some polychromos because I get better control, and the lead dust doesn't go everywhere. But same thing, I am going to only sharpen up that edge with a mechanical pencil. So a little bit better. And I'll use this. So sometimes it's a bit too different in the sense of the gradients, so it's a bit difficult to have that smooth transition. So I'm going to go over it with a 6B and just make it kind of manually blend this closer to the highlight. Then I'm using a HB. Then I'm going to make like the transition seem a little bit more flawless if I didn't have a blending stump. It just makes the blending stump's job a little easier. Okay, so then I'm going to soften everything all out. I'm going to feather it down so you don't have that rough pencil marks. So you can see the edge here is not very sharp. That's when my mechanical pencil comes in handy, which is why I love it so much. So it sharpens the edge. I'm going to create outlines without it looking super like outlines. Just gonna I'm using 2B lead. I'm going to very, very lightly try not to bring too much attention to the highlight part of the teapot. Okay. Over here, it's very, very small highlight and a very sharp one at that. So just gonna go over it with the blending stump. I want a little bit of that texture just kind of popping off a little bit. So if I'm feeling a little bit too uncomfortable, I can clean out outside as well because the charcoal dust is a little bit everywhere right now. Okay. I'm going to lighten the outline just a teeny tiny bit so I can slowly sharpen lightly with the mechanical pencil. Okay. Alright, now you can see all the eraser dust everywhere. Trading one problem for another. Okay, same thing. I'm gonna go over it with a mechanical pencil really, really softly. Yeah, okay. So now you can see the edges look a little sharper. Just going to clean this one. It's peeking out a little bit. Okay, so now it looks a little sharper, not too blurry. But if you want to go for blurry, you can totally do that. If you want like a very bokeh feel to it, like in the distance. You can totally do that with the blending stump. Okay. So now I actually used my mechanical pencil to take note where the highlight is, but you can see my mechanical pencil marks quite evidently. So I'm going to just use the kneadable eraser and just kind of soften that out so you can't easily see it anymore. Go over it with a blending stump before I make any decisions. So I like to see things as a whole. I feel like if I feel it needs to be brighter, then I will make it brighter, or I don't touch it with any pencils, so it looks like that nice sheen of light. Over here, I think because the surface of the clay is very, very shiny at the lip, so I'm just going to take a mechanical pencil and just take note of the shape. Okay, then this lip is around here. If you can see, the reference photo is just majority just highlights. I don't want to use the charcoal here, even though you see that it's very bright. Yeah, because charcoal is just a little bit too volatile for me, so I'm going to use my polychromos. Just going to darken the entrance of that lip. Now the reference photo looks very blurry because of the depth of field, but here we're just gonna use our imagination. And these are just highlights. They're basically just really, really bright areas being reflected from the light source, and they're just taking up random shapes, so there's not, don't have to focus too much on it. They can be like these little blobs and stuff. Maybe I just want to soften the entrance a little. Okay. Again, if you feel unsure, you can just bring in some, really I'm using a HB, so you can start off light. So when I first started sketching, I just started with just purely graphite, and I think I had quite a common problem that my problem was that I was unconfident, and I only started using HB and 2B or 4B and 6B, but I never really go too dark, and that my artwork just kind of suffers from that a little. Okay, so there you go. Doesn't have to be too precise. So this entire thing here is highlight, but we are still going to create a little bit more contrast here. I am using a HB, so I'm not going too dark. Across the lip here, there is also like just one line of highlight. think I made a mistake, so I'm gonna go over with my mono 0, just this area, okay, to create that line of highlight. Okay. Where were we? Yes, the HB. I feel like there needs to be a couple of lines here to create this beautiful shiny surface. And I think it needs a bit more contrast, so let's see, where's my 8B? Okay, 8B is here. Just gonna create and make it some lines just to create that contrast. And I'm going to go over with the 6B over here. I am afraid to go over with my blending stump because we started with really dark, so you have to be careful that when it blends it doesn't take the darkest part with you, so you just try to gingerly brush it up. It's always good to, the more practice you have, the more you understand your tools, the better it is to integrate your vision onto paper. So I'm gonna just do an outline over here, make it a little darker, make it feel like there's a very nice spherical shape to it. Over here. Just going to shade it up. Just viewing the reference photo. Let's see, HB, I'm gonna make like a very small highlight here, just closing in on the gap. Okay, I'm gonna go over here with my HB pencil. I feel like I'm gonna sneeze. Excuse me. Okay, excuse me. Looking at it, I feel like I have been a bit too stingy around here. It should be really, really dark. So I'm going to go over it again with my Polychromos black. So you can see once I start going, like trying to focus more on the details, you can see that I start to not be as confident. But then I'll have to go over again and see if there's anything I can do about it. Take my 2B here. So sometimes you can see that if the highlight is very not very visible, but I kind of bump up the contrast. It's my personal choice. I wanted it to pop a little more because the reference photo is just a reference photo. If you want to do your, add your own artistic touch to it, go for it, If you feel that what you have to offer is a little bit more unique, then you should add that in. Everybody has their own style. Okay, gonna go for my blending stump and go for the sharp corner again and see if I can blur that out. There's a little bit of a circular highlight here, which I'm going to go for. There's going to be several circular highlights around the pot. I'm gonna go over this with something a little darker. I'm gonna start with a HB first so I can make the transition a little smoother. Over here I want the highlight to be not as bright anymore. Go over with an 8B. See here, yeah. Okay, there's going to be several circular highlights, so I'm just going to mark them down really lightly with my HB. There's one over here, another one over here, and just a small one right here. But you can see there's a little bit of highlights, I guess more like midtones around this area, and there's a little bit very, very light very small highlight. So I'll mark this stuff down, and then I'm gonna go over it with maybe a mid-tone color. I'm gonna go maybe with a 2B. Excuse me. So I just shade this around, give it a mid-tone look, and I'm going to go over with a blending stump. So you can see how essential this blending stump is. I use it like 80% of the time. My blending stump, gonna take it and go over it. If I feel it needs to be darker, then I'll just go over it with a darker pencil, and then I just repeat the process. So you can see how you can definitely see the pencil marks, but if I use a blending stump, all that just kind of goes away, feathers everything out. So I'm near this highlight. It's gonna go a little softer. You have to know your power and control. So right now it's not very dark. You can still use the eraser and still get it looking very, very white. So it's good to know that you can always go back. Or that's why, you know, when it comes to graphite, you start to start from really, really light, and then you slowly move your way up. So if you shade too much, not to worry. Over here, we're not looking for super dark, sorry, super bright. So you can still go over it with eraser. If you feel that you just gone over too dark. you can really see the vast difference that the bottom is really dark. So we can go over it with maybe say an 8B. I do feel over here should be a little darker, so I'm going over with a polychromos just to sort of match the carbon just a little bit. Then blend that out. Where is my 8B? Oh, here it is. Oops. Right. Went a little overboard on that one. So you can see how the monotombo works really well. That line of white is just amazing. But if it works, hopefully you did not spend too much shading over there that to the point that it's just not salvageable. It is a bit difficult if you're going for really high precision such as whiskers and fur. That one is a little bit more challenging with any eraser. From what I heard, there's a thing called an electrical eraser, which kind of works like that, but it's electrical and it keeps twirling. So to get that really nice line for whiskers, never tried it before, but I just it looked like a really incredible tool that I would like to get my hands on one day. But for now, we'll continue with this teapot, and maybe in the future I can show you guys something a little bit more complex, such as animals, because I really like to, my subjects are mostly animals. But it'll be, I never really do still life. This is actually my first time doing still life. So if you want, let me know what subject you guys want me to do, and maybe I can work some things out for you guys. So I'm going over with polychromos black just to make those highlights look a little brighter. So like how you do that is you can either, you know, use an eraser, or you can actually just make the area around it darker, because sometimes when you go over it with something much darker, it kind of makes the brightness look a little more appealing, a little, you know, make it a little pop a little bit more. So I am just going through this very lightly. I'm trying to shade it a little bit without the blending stump. I'll still go over with a blending stump, but sometimes I just want the transition a little bit more seamless, so. For me, I feel sketching is one of the few artworks that I feel like I don't have to go through the ugly phase, so everything is all mapped out very nicely. So I often feel good when I sketch. If you have no idea what the ugly phase is, it's usually like work in progress, but it doesn't look very good because it's still, you know, work in progress. But sometimes it can be very discouraging because it still looks so ugly. Sometimes you can't even tell what it is until it's finished. So it is one of the most discouraging moments. Okay, over here you can also see how there is a little bit of shadow around here. I'm just gonna go over it with a polychromos. And shade. Gonna go for some polychromos at the side here. Followed by the side here. Just to sharpen it out, I'm going to use a mechanical pencil. Just so it looks straight, and then at the same time I'm just going to draw a line here. I think that's where it connected the pot, and then there will be another mark around here. So over here looks really, really dark. Okay. So now you can see it's starting to take form. Okay, you can take your kneadable eraser and you can just tap on it. And just for a little bit more seamless transition, actually maybe 6B is still a bit too difficult, too dark. Let's go with a 2B. And looking at the reference photo, there is a bit of texture in there from the pot. So I'm just going to use my mechanical pencil and just kind of do random squiggly shapes just to add that, just to give it a little bit of texture. So I'm just gonna do like some stippling effect. Just draw like random lines just to give it that texture. If you don't want to give it texture, and it's fine. It can be a smooth pot, you know, like usual porcelain pots are. But I thought to kind of give this a little bit interesting touch into it and see how this goes. Because I've never done still life before, so this is an interesting project. if you feel like the 2B pencil is a bit much, like if it's too dark, you can always go over it with a kneadable eraser. Just tap on it just to make it a little lighter. You can also smoothen it out by feathering it around the shadows. I'm just going to do this just for the body of the pot. Okay, I'm gonna do this for the rest of the body around the highlights. So I'm just going to use the kneadable eraser just to make things lighter, but at the same time I don't want it to be too bright, so I'm just going to go over this with the blending stump. So there are always several ways to do this. And the last one over here. Again, go over with its unreadable eraser and just tap on it as it gets lighter. Then use a blending stump to darken the sides of it. So now it looks a little bit more interesting. The thing about wanting to make it look a little too perfect is sometimes it looks great, but adding something extra to it, like giving it a weathering effect, you know, like instead of polished metal, it looks a little rusted, a little dented. It gives it more character. And because like I remember an artist told me once that, you know, you have polished metal and that's great, but if you have like dents, rust, it gives it history. If it, you know that this knight has been into battle. A polished shiny helmet indicates he has never been to battle, so you know there's like a story behind it that makes it so wonderful. Oops. Okay, I'm gonna use the monotombo and make a little bit highlight here. Okay. Now I'm gonna work on this is the body so far. I think we are pretty much done with the body. I'm gonna go over to the handle now and just lightly. Alright, so in here, if you can see the outline, you can see there's a lot of space in between. I'm going to close the gap using the polychromos. And even then, I'm not going to go all the way to the highlight, sorry, not the highlight, to the edge because of that really thin highlight around, as you can see in the reference photo. Okay, so I'm going to reinforce that with the mechanical pencil, and I'm going to try to go light. I know I say that I try to avoid highlights, but it's quite difficult because if you don't put the sorry, not highlights. Oh my god, I'm mixing all my words. I'm sorry. I know I said I try to avoid outlines, but it's really difficult considering that your background is white and you're trying to like make it stand out from that white, but at the same time you want to give this highlight because the highlight is what makes your subject so interesting. Even in photography, I love backlighting because it really outlines your subject. It really pulls it away from the background and make it like a thing of its own. So I'm using the mechanical pencil to make that shadow look very, very sharp. Alright, let's move here for a bit. Let's start working our way up. So it's Okay. I'm gonna go with an 8B here. And you can see there's a little bit of highlight here. A little bit of mid-tone. Let's make it a mid-tone because it's not pure white. I'm gonna use a mechanical pencil and do the outline again. I think maybe just give it a little bit of effect. Same stippling pattern as the body. So we're slowly moving to the top. So this is what we have so far. Okay. And we're gonna go up. Okay. Slowly. Here is gonna be real highlights again, so slowly just do it real light. Okay, now let's see here. Let's take a look at our our reference photo art. So we'll go back using a blending stump only. We're gonna spread all that graphite. We're gonna transition to this side. And get a little bit of a darker tone. Okay. I'm gonna go back up here. There's a very thin line of midtone. So I'm gonna go over it with maybe, let's say, a 2B. Go over here. Maybe an 8B, just to bump up the contrast over here. Okay, we can go over it with a blending stump just to feather it all off. Okay. I think maybe we're going to, actually, I'm gonna lighten a little bit of the stippling effect here. Okay. Going to go over with a little bit of the stippling effect, but not very obvious, just a little bit. And they're going to be smaller. Just around this big highlight here. Okay, I'm going to go over it with the kneadable eraser. And just dab, dab, dab. Gonna make the tip a little bit finer. Okay. Maybe I can go over it again, just. Below here, going to make the outline a little sharper. Just color the shadow out. Alright. Going to go over it with some kneadable eraser, make the outline look a little faded. It's a little too dark for my taste. Okay, we are more or less done. We're gonna move on to the top part, and when we're almost done, then we can call it good. Oh right, and then we have to do the shadow. Most important also is the shadow. Okay, so again, remember when I said the top here is really not that fat. You can go over with mechanical pencil, make it look a little finer with more control. Oh no! I destroyed the line. Hang on, let me just Okay. I want to sharpen the tip. Okay. I was gonna say go over with a blending stump, but I am afraid that would like spread too much dark graphite, so I'm just gonna go over with the HB really lightly. So it's not too bright. I want it to tone it down just a little bit. Okay, I'm gonna try and take blending stump, but just very lightly smoothen out the graphite. If you feel that is too dark, you can always go back with the kneadable eraser, or you can make it really bright using a mono tombow eraser. There's a lot of highlights going on. For the most part, I think this would require more mechanical pencil. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna go over the HB first. I'm gonna map out where are the highlights. So there's one highlight here. There's a long highlight here. Even you can see the pot, the cover of the pot is a bit tilted, but in my case I don't really want to do that. But if you want to follow the reference photo, you can go ahead and do that, it's fine. I am going to start coloring using a HB pencil. going to go over with a mechanical pencil. Alright, just a little bit here. Maybe some lines, sorry, maybe some lines make it a little darker than others. Okay. Now for the top. Going to reinforce those outlines, and I'm going to start again. Going to use let's see, where's my HB pencil. Just gonna draw the shapes on top, so it's not really super circular. So I'm gonna take a blending stem and just carefully shade it. I use maybe a 2B just to draw the edge here. Okay, then take a bit of the HB again. Just draw the shape. So it's a reflection, so you're just going to, sorry, this one maybe need one line to separate the reflection from the real handle. Get a 2B and just do this. Maybe an 8B would suffice. Okay. take a blending stump. As it moves further from its original object, it'll get blurrier. I'm gonna take a mechanical pencil and just kind of draw the shape of the pot top here. Okay, most of it, because the light source is coming from behind it, so the lid is the one that gets most of the highlight. Let me get my HB and just kind of plan it out. So it goes something like this. Okay, then move up here. Okay. Yeah, alright, so I'm gonna take a HB and just color the areas that I'm comfortable it being shadows and midtones. Sorry, forgot this side here. Going over it with the blending stone just to feather it all out. So as far as the lid is concerned, there isn't much to do with it. Just, you know, just a little bit. Less is more. Taking a 2B just to darken certain areas of the pot. Because if it's just one tone, it's a little bit flat. So we're just gonna add just a little bit darkness, a little bit here, a little bit there. They're very obscure shapes, but it's enough to make it look a little more real. Okay, and there you go. There is your realistic teapot. Oh, right, I forgot. Oh, I forgot about the shadows again. I always focus so much on the subject. Okay, so for the shadow, it's very simple. Just go this way and just go that way. And just gonna go, I'm using a HB pencil. Okay, so I'm just doing the edges. And taking a feathering tool. Well, it is a feathering tool. My blending stump here, and just kind of going away at it. Oops. See, this is what happens when you're not careful with your blending stump. Okay. Going back. Alright, moving from HB to 2B, getting from the stand of the pot, moving below. So it's somewhere around here that it starts to get a little lighter, but we are not there yet. We're going for 2B, HB, and maybe 8B. You don't want it to be as dark as the bottom of the pot here. So follow this circular motion, this circular shape here. Then maybe we go with an 8B. So when you blend, try not to, when you use the blending stump, maybe use the sharper edge so you don't blend the shadow and the teapot. Sometimes even the blending stump doesn't look very flawless in its transition, so you probably need the kneadable eraser to help you out. use the sharp edge when you're near the teapot, because you don't want it to blend. You can, if it's not as dark as you want, you can always go over it with a mechanical pencil. I think it's not dark enough. I'm gonna go over it with 8B again. Gonna make the edges here a little bit sharper. Okay, gonna soften it a bit. Sorry, pardon the shaky cam. Gonna go over with a polychromos. Okay, and over with mechanical pencil. And there you go. And don't be discouraged if this is your first time sketching and maybe it didn't turn out as realistic as you were hoping it to be. Don't let that discourage you. In fact, just take it as a learning point where now you definitely, with each piece you do, you learn a whole lot. And you know, don't get caught up in the feeling that you didn't reach the vision that you planned, because often our expectations tend to go through the roof and not being what you want it to be, because we always like to set a little bit of unrealistic expectations on ourselves. So I hope this video has helped you into understanding a little bit of sketching and the tools you're using. And I hope this can open more doors. If you want me to do a little bit more, if you want me to do more demonstration of, you know, animals, still life. I haven't actually sketched any humans yet, but if you have any, you know, requests, feel free to drop a comment below and I'll see what I can do. So thank you.
I'd like to thank my patrons for pledging for me and making all this possible.